They told you it was passion. Carl Jung would say it's your shadow craving its missing half. You think you choose who you're attracted to. But what if every time you've said, "There's just something about them," you were announcing your deepest wound to the world? You know the feeling. That electric pull towards someone who's just out of reach. The one who texts you back just enough to keep you hoping, but never enough to give you peace. The one who makes you feel chosen one moment and abandoned the next. Your friends call it bad luck in love. Your therapist might call it attachment issues, but Jung would call it something else entirely. He'd call it your psyche trying to complete an ancient story. Think about it. Why do successful, intelligent people find themselves inexplicably drawn to partners who withhold love? Why do empathetic souls keep attracting narcissists? Why do you find yourself making excuses for behavior you'd never tolerate from a friend? It's not random. It's not coincidence. And it's definitely not chemistry. It's your nervous system mistaking chaos for home. Because somewhere long ago, you learned that love comes with conditions, that affection must be earned, that the people who matter most are the ones who make you prove your worth again and again. Your mother who praised you only when you were perfect. Your father who was emotionally unavailable, teaching you that men's attention must be fought for. The caregiver who loved you when you were useful, invisible when you weren't. And now your unconscious seeks out that familiar dance, the push and pull, the maybe yes, maybe no, the exhausting performance of trying to win love from someone who's already decided you're not enough. This is what Jung called repetition compulsion, the unconscious drive to recreate our earliest wounds, hoping this time we'll get it right. This time, we'll finally earn the love we've always craved. But here's what your shadow doesn't want you to know. You're not healing the past. You're bleeding it into the present. Carl Jung discovered that within every person live hidden figures, what he called the anima and animus. The anima is the feminine aspect within men. The animus is the masculine aspect within women. These aren't just concepts. They're living, breathing psychological forces that shape every attraction you've ever felt. But here's where it gets devastating. When these inner figures remain unconscious, they don't guide you toward love. They guide you toward projection. You see, you don't fall in love with people. You fall in love with the parts of yourself you've never developed. The confident woman attracts the shy man because she carries his unexpressed power. The emotionally unavailable man draws in the nurturing woman because he reflects her hidden strength, the part of her that learned to give love but never demand it back. This is your persona at war with your shadow. Your persona is who you've learned to be, the mask you wear, to be accepted, loved, successful. But your shadow is who you really are underneath all that performance. It's the parts of yourself you abandoned to survive. Let me paint you a picture. Meet Sophie, 32, successful marketing director. To the world, she's confident, independent, thriving. But Sophie finds herself repeatedly drawn to men who are emotionally distant, commitment phobic, brilliant, but unstable. Why? Because beneath her polished exterior lives a little girl who learned that love is something you chase, never something you rest in. Her shadow carries all the neediness, vulnerability, and desperate longing she had to hide to become successful Sophie. So when she meets John, charming, intelligent, but utterly incapable of emotional intimacy, her shadow screams, "Finally someone who speaks my language." Her conscious mind thinks it's attraction, but it's actually recognition. Her shadow recognizing the emotional unavailability she's carried within herself all along. You are not falling for them. You are falling for the unfinished story within you. And here's the cruel irony. The very traits that trigger this shadow attraction are often the traits that will eventually destroy you. The mysterious person is usually just emotionally unavailable. The challenging partner is typically someone who can't or won't meet your needs. The exciting relationship is often just chaos. Your nervous system has mistaken for passion. Think about your last intense attraction. What did they have that you felt you lacked? What did they represent that you'd never allowed yourself to be? Your attraction wasn't random. It was your psyche trying to give you a message, but instead of hearing the message, you chased the messenger. This is how intelligent, self-aware people find themselves making excuses for behavior they'd never tolerate from a friend. This is how empathetic souls keep attracting narcissists. This is how you end up in relationships that feel more like battlefields than sanctuaries. Your Carl Jung Shadow has been running the show, and it's time you met it face to face. Because when you understand this mechanism, when you see how your unconscious patterns hijack your conscious choices, everything changes. You stop being a victim of attraction and start becoming the author of your own love story. But first, you have to understand just how deep this pattern goes. You have to see how your earliest wounds became the blueprint for every relationship that followed. You have to recognize that what you call chemistry might actually be your nervous system recognizing its original trauma and saying, "This feels like home." Take a moment right now. Think about the last person who made your heart race, who occupied your thoughts for weeks or months. Ask yourself, what was it about them that felt so familiar? What was it about the way they loved or didn't love that reminded you of something you'd felt before? Your honest answer will reveal more about your shadow than years of therapy ever could. Here's what no one tells you about attraction. It can be weaponized. There are people who've learned to identify and trigger your shadow wounds, not out of love, but out of control. They sense your abandoned parts and mirror them back to you, creating an illusion of completion that feels like destiny, but functions like addiction. This is how intelligent people find themselves obsessing over partners who are clearly wrong for them. This is how self-aware individuals get trapped in relationships that make them feel crazy. Your shadow has been hacked. Let me tell you about Sean, a 34-year-old therapist. Yes, a therapist, someone whose job it is to understand human psychology. Sean keeps falling for women who are emotionally explosive, dramatic, and ultimately destructive. His friends are baffled. His colleagues are concerned. He knows better, but somehow he can't stop. What Sean doesn't realize is that his attraction has nothing to do with these women, and everything to do with his mother, a brilliant but emotionally volatile artist who alternated between smothering him with attention and disappearing into her own world for days. Sean learned that love feels like walking on eggshells, that peace is the absence of passion, that real connection requires drama. So when he meets Emma, beautiful, unpredictable, emotionally intense, his nervous system floods with recognition. Not love, recognition. His shadow saying, "This is what love feels like. This is home." But here's the devastating part. Emma isn't drawn to Sean despite his emotional unavailability. She's drawn to him because of it. She has her own shadow, wound, her own unconscious pattern that thrives on the chase, the uncertainty, the fantasy of being the one who finally fixes the unavailable man. They're not falling in love. They're enabling each other's wounds. Jung wrote something that will pierce your soul if you let it. We don't attract what we want. We attract what we are. But he could have added, And what we are includes everything we've refused to face about ourselves. This is what Jung called repetition compulsion, the unconscious drive to recreate our earliest wounds, hoping this time we'll get it right. This time, we'll finally earn the love we've always craved. But you're not healing the past. You're bleeding it into the present. Here's the mechanism. Your nervous system doesn't distinguish between familiar and good. It just recognizes patterns. So if love came with conditions in your childhood, if affection was earned through performance achievement or perfect behavior, your adult nervous system will seek out partners who recreate those same conditions. The unavailable partner who makes you work for every scrap of attention. They're not playing hard to get. They're playing your childhood wound like a violin. The person who loves you one day and is cold the next. They're not complex or mysterious. They're activating your original abandonment wound and calling it chemistry. The partner who needs you to be smaller, quieter, less demanding to keep their love. They're not protecting the relationship. They're exploiting your fear of being too much, a fear you learned when being your full self wasn't safe. This is why conscious people find themselves in unconscious relationships. This is why therapy and self-help sometimes fail to change your relationship patterns, because your Carl Jung shadow isn't interested in your healing. It's interested in its own completion. Your shadow has convinced you that the person who triggers your deepest wound is the person who can heal it. But shadow work teaches us the opposite. The person who can heal your wound is you. The attraction that feels most meant to be is often the attraction you most need to question. Ask yourself right now, does this person feel safe, or do they feel addictive? Do they bring out your best self, or do they activate your survival patterns? Do you feel peaceful in their presence, or do you feel like you're constantly performing, hoping, waiting for the other shoe to drop? Your honest answer will tell you whether you're experiencing love or whether you're experiencing the beautiful, terrible dance of two shadows trying to heal in all the wrong places. And here's what might terrify you most once you see this pattern. Once you understand how your unconscious has been choosing for you, you can't unsee it. You can't go back to the innocent belief that attraction is just chemistry, that love is just fate, that you're just unlucky in relationships. You'll have to face the truth that your Carl Jung shadow has been sabotaging your happiness, not out of malice, but out of a misguided attempt to heal wounds that can only be healed from within. But this awareness, painful as it is also your liberation. Because you can't change what you can't see. And now you're beginning to see everything. There comes a moment in every shadow-driven attraction when the illusion begins to crack. It might be the third time they disappear without explanation. The fifth time, they choose someone else over you. The 10th time, you find yourself explaining their behavior to friends who stopped buying your excuses months ago. This is what Jung called the collision with reality, when your projection meets the actual person and the gap becomes impossible to ignore. But here's what makes this moment so disorienting. Your shadow doesn't want to give up the fantasy. It would rather suffer in familiar pain than risk the unknown territory of actual love. Because real love, healthy love, feels strange to a nervous system that was programmed for chaos. Peace feels like boredom. Consistency feels like lack of passion. Kindness feels like settling. This is the cruelest joke your shadow plays on you. It convinces you that healthy feels wrong. Let me share something that might shock you. Most people who've been in shadow-driven relationships find healthy partners boring at first. Not because healthy people are actually boring, but because their nervous systems have been conditioned to associate love with struggle. When someone shows up, consistently communicates clearly, and doesn't require you to chase or prove your worth, your shadow starts to panic. Where's the challenge? It asks. Where's the drama that proves this is real love? But this is exactly the lie that keeps you trapped. This is the voice that convinces you to leave good partners for exciting ones, stable relationships for chaotic ones, peace for passion. Your shadow has taught you that love should hurt, that if it's easy, it's not worth it, that the best relationships require you to fight for every moment of happiness. This is the cost of unconscious attraction. It doesn't just choose the wrong people for you, it convinces you that the right people are wrong. I want you to imagine something right now. Imagine being attracted to someone who actually sees you. Not the performed version of you, but the real you. Someone who doesn't need you to chase them, convince them, or prove your worth. Someone whose presence doesn't activate your fight or flight response, but actually helps you breathe deeper. If that image feels uncomfortable, you're not alone. If it feels too easy or not exciting enough, you're not broken. You're just discovering how much your nervous system has confused love with survival. But here's what changes everything. When you start to recognize this pattern, when you begin to see how your shadow has been choosing for you, you gain the power to choose differently. It starts with a simple question. Is this person activating my wound or honoring my healing? When someone makes you feel like you have to earn their love, they're activating your wound. When someone makes you question your worth, your sanity, your reality, they're activating your wound. When someone's affection comes with conditions, demands, or the constant threat of withdrawal, they're activating your wound. But when someone's presence helps you feel more like yourself, not less, when their love doesn't require you to abandon parts of yourself to keep it, when being with them feels like coming home rather than going to war, that's someone who honors your healing. The truth about healing isn't that you stop being attracted to the wrong people. The truth is that you start noticing the difference between attraction and activation, between chemistry and chaos, between someone who complements your wholeness and someone who exploits your wounds. When you stop chasing fire, you discover the warmth of the sun. But this requires something that terrifies the shadow. It requires you to grieve the fantasy, to mourn the story you've been telling yourself about love connection and what you deserve. It requires you to admit that maybe, just maybe, you've been so busy trying to earn love that you forgot what it feels like to simply receive it. Take a breath, right here, right now. What would it feel like to stop performing? What would it feel like to be chosen not despite your flaws, but including them? What would it feel like to rest in someone's affection instead of working for it? Your shadow might call that boring, but your soul would call it home. And that's where the real work begins. Not in finding the right person, but in becoming the person who can recognize and receive healthy love when it shows up. Here's what changes everything. When you begin to consciously relationship with your shadow, when you start to integrate those abandoned parts of yourself, the whole game changes. You stop looking for someone to complete you because you've started the work of completing yourself. This isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming whole. It's about recognizing that the qualities you've been desperately seeking in others, are qualities you're capable of developing within yourself. That confidence you're drawn to, you can cultivate it. That emotional availability you crave, you can offer it to yourself first. That sense of adventure, that creativity, that depth, all of it exists within you, waiting to be integrated. Jung called this process individuation, the journey toward psychological wholeness. And when you're on this path, something beautiful happens to your attractions. They become choices rather than compulsions. You start asking different questions. Instead of, how can I make them love me? You ask, do I feel safe and seen with this person? Instead of, what do they think of me? You ask, what do I think of them? Instead of being drawn to people who trigger your wounds, you find yourself attracted to people who honor your healing. Let me share something that might surprise you. Healthy attraction feels quiet. It doesn't scream. It doesn't demand. It doesn't make you question your sanity or spend hours analyzing text messages. Healthy attraction feels like recognition, but not the desperate recognition of your shadow meeting its match. It's the gentle recognition of your true self meeting another true self. Here are some questions to ask yourself. Questions that can help you distinguish between shadow attraction and conscious love. When I'm with this person, do I feel more like myself or less like myself? Do they encourage my growth, or do they need me to stay small to feel comfortable? Do I feel energized after spending time with them, or depleted? Am I attracted to who they actually are, or to who I imagine they could become? Do they treat me with the same respect they show to people they want to impress? When conflict arises, do we grow closer or further apart? Do I feel free to express all parts of myself, or do I hide certain aspects to keep their interest? Write these down. Journal with them. Let them sit in your body and notice what comes up. The goal isn't to find someone perfect. The goal is to find someone real. Someone who doesn't activate your survival patterns, but supports your thriving patterns. Someone whose love doesn't feel like a drug you need to chase, but like a home you can rest in. This is conscious love. Love that comes from integration rather than projection. Love that heals rather than wounds. Love that sees you rather than sees through you. Here's what I want to leave you with. You are not doomed to repeat your patterns. You are not destined to chase unavailable love. You are not broken because you've been attracted to people who couldn't love you the way you needed. You were just trying to heal in the only way you knew how. But now you know something different. Now you understand that attraction isn't always love. Sometimes it's just recognition. Recognition of your wounds, your longings, your abandoned parts, crying out for integration. Before you fall in love with them, fall in love with the wounded parts of yourself, still screaming for attention. Before you lose yourself in someone else's chaos, find yourself in your own healing. Because here's what Jung knew, that most people never discover when you integrate your Carl Jung shadow. When you reclaim the parts of yourself, you've abandoned love stops being a battlefield. It becomes freedom. Freedom to choose rather than react. Freedom to love from wholeness rather than neediness. Freedom to be seen for who you truly are rather than who you think you need to be. The person who's meant for you won't require you to abandon yourself to earn their love. They'll invite you to remember who you've always been underneath all the performance. So the next time you feel that electric pull, that I can't explain it, but there's just something about them, feeling pause. Breathe. Ask yourself, am I being drawn to love or am I being drawn to repetition? The moment you stop performing empathy, is the moment you start receiving it. If this resonated with you, share your thoughts in the comments. What patterns have you noticed? Your insight might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. You are not your wounds. You are the consciousness that can heal them.